that's spring. That's not spring, that's spring. That's spring. That's winter. This is spring. This is winter. Oh, that's spring with a bit of winter on top. And then there's a bit of winter there. And then down there, a lot of spring with a lot of winter. Oh, there's some spring surrounded by winter. Yeah, there's some spring, bit of winter on top. And it's May. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Young Blue Brit Q&A Sundays. Good to have you all here. We're going to be going through our first selection of questions for the day. First question being from Maximus Sun. Now Maximus Sun says, repeating my question you missed. Yes, I did miss a question and I am eternally sorry. Did you know that Russians relate to British culture even more than American culture? Yes, I do actually, and I understand it because we are, I think, from older countries, and America's quite a new country, and they did things on a different basis to us. So, yeah, we've still got those kind of European roots. I mean, Britain is kind of detached from the continent. However, if there's one thing that I can say, in my experience of cultural exchange, humour exchanges with Russians, we are remarkably similar. In fact, I would go as far as to say Brits have far more in common with Russians than they do their French and German counterparts when it comes to humour. So our humour is very dark, it's very sarcastic, it's dry, it's witty. It has a very special place in the world. And Russians certainly share that humour. It's a very specific, smart humour that is just a treasure to the world. So continuing on with the question, we love British humour, especially Monty Python. I love Monty Python, especially Life of Brian. Life of Brian is one of my favourite movies. Monty Python is just a beauty, especially the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail, what a classic. You just can't beat these movies. If any of my followers have not seen those, go and watch them and enjoy them. We love Jason Statham. Yeah, he's alright. And have lots of fun memes with him. With some of the Guy Ritchie movies, absolutely. I'm so glad, and I can see why Russians would relate to Guy Ritchie movies, especially after watching Brat 1 and Brat 2. So, of course, after watching those movies, you see that, you know, with Russian movies, especially the big ones, right, there's that kind of nitty, gritty, grimy, crime side of the genres. And we both share those, especially through our Guy Ritchie films. You know, like, I know many Russians love The Gentleman, which is one of Guy Ritchie's latest movies. It's just a masterpiece, as well as many others. Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, these are just British classics. These are just beautiful, beautiful movies. Anyone that has not watched them, like I say, go and watch them, because seriously, they are the creme de la creme. That's all I can say on the matter. Now, of course, then we're moving on to, of course, we have the movie Three Men in a Boat, after the novel Jerome K. Jerome, because we used to read it at school. Yeah, that's one thing I will say. Our literature appears a lot in Russia, British literature. It's certainly well observed by me. And then, of course, it is very popular here, at least among older generations. Yeah, I mean, I'd say that you notice a lot with the movies, our British movies, the good ones, the ones that aren't woke, the ones that don't have the message in, tend to go a long way here. The ones that are just bloody good movies by us. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to see that people enjoy this stuff. And it's, you know, and also there's one thing you didn't mention, Maxima, Peaky Blinders. Many people just love Peaky Blinders here, and it's a pleasure to see. You know, especially when I say to people, when people ask me where I'm from, and I say I'm from Wolverhampton, and then they don't know where Wolverhampton is, so I say near Birmingham, and then they turn around, oh, Birmingham, Peaky Blinders, and yeah, all of a sudden they're just getting the references. It's a pleasure for me to see, it really is. And then, of course, Mary Poppins, played by incomparable Natalia Andreychenko. Now, I've not actually seen Natalia play, however, that's interesting news to my ears, to be fair. I suggest you watch all of these. I'll certainly try when I've got time. I'm a bit strapped for time at the moment. It would be great to hear your reviews on these. Actually, yeah, I certainly may consider this. This is pretty cool. I might talk about a lesser known in Russia I personally adore, but there would be no point. So for my question being so long, thank you. I'm very glad that you observed the. I'm just going to go to the first point. The difference between British culture and American. Now, that's it's not so black and white. I think there is a grey area. So humour-wise and culture-wise, yes, I would say Russia and Russians are certainly more close to the British when it comes to the humour matter.
You know, it's the Protestant base of America, that things are done by text and by works, as opposed to by submission and by, you know, a doctrine in the way that the higher church, you know, European, rump, we still believe. And there is a sense of original sin in Europe. I mean, this is a bizarre theory that I won't push to its limit, but when it comes to comedy, it's satisfactorily, I think, obvious that the American comic hero is a wisecracker who is above his material and who is above the idiots around him. And the British comic, put it this way, the American comic hero, like John Belushi or someone like that, you know that scene in Animal House where there's a fellow playing folk music on a guitar, and John Belushi picks up the guitar and destroys it. And the cinema loved it because he just smashes it and then waggles his eyebrows at the camera. Everyone says, God, he's so great. Well, a British comedian would want to play the folk singer. We want to play the failure. All the great British comic heroes are people who want life to be better and on whom life craps from a terrible height, and whose sense of dignity is constantly compromised by the world letting them down. They want to wear a tie. They're not quite smart enough to wear an old school tie because they're kind of lower middle class. They are Arthur Lowe in Dad's Army. They are Anthony Aloysius Hancock. They are Basil Fawlty. They are Del Boy. They are Blackadder. They're not quite the upper echelons, and they try to be decent and right. Everything tries to be proper. They're even David Brent from The Office. And their lack of dignity is embarrassing. They are a failure. They are an utter failure. They're brought up to expect empire and respect and decency and being able to wear a blazer in public, and everyone around them just goes whereas the American hero is the smart talking, he's Jim Carrey and he's Ben Stiller and he's, you know, whoever, he just goes all the way back. They can wisecrack their way out of any situation. They win the girl, they're smarter, they've got the biggest knob in the room. The British guy arrives at the room and says, oh my God, I've left my knob behind. I haven't even got one. And in a sense, comedy is the microcosm that allows us to examine the entire difference between our two cultures. Ours is bathed in failure, but we make a glory of our failure. We celebrate it. We love the fact that every great British comic hero can go into a dictionary. He's a bit of a Basil Fawlty. He's a bit of a Captain Mannering. He's a bit of a Steptoe. He's a bit of a Baldrick. He's a bit of a Blackadder. He's a bit of a this. You know, they're characters that we recognize, all of them so flawed as to be an utter disaster. But you can't do that with American comedy. You can't say he's a bit of, who's that chap in Friends, or he's a bit of a, it doesn't really work. They're not characters at all. They're just brilliant repositories of fantastic killer one-liners.
And also, literature and all that sort of stuff, certainly far more close to the British than the Americans. Now, where that's actually not the case is how Russia is a proud nation. Like the Americans still have that kind of internal pride about them. Like, yeah, we're America and we want to do well and stuff like that. Like the average American on the ground generally still hasn't had neoliberalism kicked into them. Like when you ask, say, I don't know, say if you were to go to speak to an American who is from like the Midwest or something like that, or Middle America, flyover states or what have you, you would certainly find that when it comes to traditional values, Christian values, and all of these matters, actually I believe that Russians would probably have a lot more in common than they think with Americans' cases. I believe that they may have a lot more in common with Americans than they would the British, because think, if you spoke to the average Russian, they're proud of being Russian, right? They're very proud of where they're from, they're proud of their history, they hold this level of pride in who they are, and they can identify themselves and identify their history, and they're not ashamed of it. Whereas the Brits, in 2025, certainly are. There's also this kind of thing where, men here are manly men, and women here are feminine women, and there's that distinction and everyone understands it, whereas that's just kind of been wiped out in Britain in this day and age. That's why especially you don't get much these days good. I mean, you mentioned Monty Python and all that sort of stuff, and Guy Ritchie, great mentions by the way, but if you look at like loads of different materials that you do get out of Britain at the moment, I mean, it's just crap. I mean, you look at Bridgerton, you look at Queen Charlotte being black, and all of this, you soon start to realise, actually, you know what, this civilisation's like cooked. It's absolutely cooked, it's toast. Like, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, with regards to moving forwards as civilisations, I think, yeah, that's a good mention. Americans still have that kind of pride and that pushback that British people don't. Now we're going to be going to Igor. So, Igor, let's have a look at what we've got. So, is there a big difference between the average Russian and the average Englishman in terms of attitude to life, family, spending free time, and so on? Thanks in advance. So Igor, let's just touch on that. So is there a big difference between the average Russian and the average Englishman in terms of attitude to life? We'll start there. So attitude to life, yes, there is a difference. So in general, you find that, I would say, English people generally really worry about the micro stuff, right? So, there have been times where things have seemed nearly disastrous in some cases with situations that I've been in my life, and a Russian will look at it and say, yeah, don't worry about it, everything will be okay. And you're sitting there thinking, but it's not okay. It's not going to be okay. It's not, look at this situation. Like, and then a Russian will be like, всё будет хорошо. Don't worry about it. It's okay. And it's kind of rubbed off on me. Since being in Russia for this long, I've certainly relaxed a lot and just kind of chilled out. Like, I've realised that, because I think what it is, in most recent history, Russians have certainly been through a lot more than what English people have in terms of adversity and, hard times and what have you. So, for soft English people, basically, it's like we certainly cannot say that we've been through the kind of hardships that Russians have in most recent times. It's just, you can't do it. 90s and what have you. So that's kind of the thing. A problem for us is kind of a bigger problem, whereas to a Russian it's a bit like, nah, well, it's not as bad as that time. You know what I mean? So Russians are generally more relaxed and are generally, I would say, more creative in fixing the problem, because they've kind of been forced to be creative to fix the problem, and they are generally good at getting problems solved in just a way that English people aren't, if I'm honest. It's, like the way that, that there isn't this kind of complain culture here. We have a complaining culture in England. I don't think that will ever go. I think that's just a part of it. And Russians don't really have that complaining culture. It's just recognition. It's terrible. What we're going to do about it? It's very straightforward, direct, and you know where you stand. So in general, attitude to life. I would suggest that, of course, with attitude to life, our attitude to life is kind of a bit more, how can I say it, economically centred. So, at the end of the day, it has no choice to be wherever you are in the world. But, however, it's certainly observed on a level that is slightly more than it would be in Russia, I would say. Whereas in Russia, it seems not as much as we do, in an interesting way. We used to be a bit more similar when it came to political issues, right? So the political state of the world, and I'll explain why. Now, the average Russian just gets on with their life most of the time, just gets on with their life, wants to go to work, wants to have a good job, wants to get paid and go home and have a good time with their family. That's kind of how we had it until, I would probably say, somewhere in the 2010s, maybe around about the 2015, 2016 area, when this whole woke thing really became a big thing. Because for us, it was kind of like we didn't want to be involved in politics. We kind of had a system before that where it was like, if you didn't want to get involved in it, you could kind of just get on with your life. Whereas in England, it's kind of like you can't just get on with your life. It's in your face. It's in your face on every corner now. So it's like the old saying that if you don't have an interest in politics, politics will have an interest in you. And that's kind of the thing. That's where that's the corner that we've been pushed into. It's kind of like all we wanted to do was just have a normal life, a normal, relaxed family life. But they started to screw around with the system, let's say, and upend our roots, upend our lives, and make us poorer and poorer, and just demoralise us over the span of a generation, basically. And that's kind of the thing. We've been kind of forced to become a lot more involved. Whereas I used to run speaking clubs in Moscow, and at my speaking clubs it was great because I would generally gauge the atmosphere. And you know what it is with Russia? It just seems that because everyone is generally materially well, I mean, not kind of in the materialistic sense, but in the kind of, we're housed, we're clothed, we're fed, like, everything's alright, you know what I mean? Like, people aren't as heavily involved in what's going on, but we kind of have to, if we're living in England. Like, we've got no choice. We have to be involved, we have to fight back, and we have to, we've got to. And that's kind of the thing, like, the amount of times now that, I've met Russians, and because I'm just so used to it in Britain, it being like that, that I've met Russians that just aren't involved in any of that at all, and they're just living a good life, living a good family life, just enjoying life. It just takes me back to a time. It just brings my mind back to a time where I was like that, where I enjoyed that, where my family enjoyed that. Because, yeah, things weren't this bad. And, yeah, when I see it, it makes me nostalgic. It makes me very, very nostalgic. And it reminds me, I'm so grateful to live in a country that has that, you know, where if you don't want to get involved, you don't bother anybody, nobody's going to bother you. But that's the thing in England, like, if you don't get involved, no, people will bother you. Society will bother you. The woke people will bother you. And it's a little bit like a thumb that's just pressing on you every day in a certain way, whether it be through the media, through your employment. It's in the water you drink, the air that you breathe, so you have kind of no choice. Whereas, yeah, I mean, you kind of do have a choice in Russia, to be honest. You don't need to be involved politically, and you can just focus on your career and just have a good life. But that's the thing, in our country, they're screwing around with everything, from your career to the football to men's spaces to you name it. They're screwing around with it in some way. So you kind of can't escape that. So whenever I speak to Russians that don't have to put up with that, or you just don't get involved, basically, it just brings me back to that time. Wow, you guys, like, you're currently in a time where you can just not be involved in that. And in my country, like, it affects everybody. And that's the thing, when it affects everybody, it's in the conversation, isn't it? So the things that you talk about, and yeah, it's nice to just be in Normalville, just because things are normal here, basically. With regards to family, you know, like, I would say there's certainly a bigger emphasis on certainly spending time with family here than there is in England. And I'll tell you why. It's not so much culture, it's more economic. Now here, like, you do get, like, free time because you can afford it, right? Like, the disposable income's there to afford free time with your family, which is very nice. So, you know, the economic situation here is just better than in England, right? So in England, it's kind of like, yeah, everyone's working around the clock to pay the bills, to keep a roof over their family's head. So, yeah, I mean, family life is deeply affected. Not because we don't want it, not because we don't want the same as what the Russians have, but because we can't have it and we want it, you know. But we know that if we would spend time like Russians have, like, we wouldn't be able to afford that right now, because we know that the rent needs to be paid, the gas and electricity needs to be paid, which is incredibly extortionate. The council tax needs to be paid, the water needs to be paid, the internet needs to be paid, the list goes on and on and on, and everything that needs to be paid, which just leads you to basically working 7 days a week, basically. Even if you're working 6 days, I mean, you probably would have been working 6 days, 12 hours. So, you know, on your Sunday, you just want to sleep, basically. You don't have time for all of that. And that, I can also hit two birds with one stone on this one and mention the free time aspect. You mentioned spending free time. Free time is spent differently in England. I would suggest that free time is more likely to be spent in pubs by the average person. Not so much here. There's a lot more of a wider variety. Not that there's not a wide variety of things you can do in England. I used to spend my time climbing mountains, driving around Wales. I used to spend my free time doing all sorts. But in general, if it's a Friday and you don't know what to do, I mean, you call your mates. First thing they're going to suggest is pub, go for a drink, go for a beer. You know, it's lovely. I love it personally. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I used to love going out for a beer on a Friday night and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But that's certainly the most likely occurrence, the idea that we're going to go out for a beer. Whereas here, I mean, I speak to so many people that are just like, oh, do you want to go to the park? Do you want to have a barbecue? Do you want to do this? And it's like, yeah, the idea of pub just never really seems to come up at all. So yeah. So we're now going to be going over to the one and only Rip Current. He says, here we go. What Russian food do you love the most? And what British grub do you really miss? Good question. So what Russian... In fact, it's a good question, but it's also an easy one to answer. It's pilmeni, mate. It's pilmeni. I'll tell you what, pilmeni with a bit of vinegar and a bit of smetana is the stuff that dreams are made of. I'm not too fussy on what's in the pilmeni, to be honest. It can be meat, it can be something else. But as long as it's got some smetana and a bit of vinegar, it's an experience. It's delicious. I'll tell you, that is my favourite. Full stop. Now, are there any British foods that I miss, you ask? It's got to be pork scratchings. Pork scratchings. Oh my life. Do I miss pork scratchings? Yeah. Now, that is a traditional black country British snack, right? That is it's just amazing, right? I believe Americans call it pork rind of some, I don't know, but we call them pork scratchings. And yeah, oh goodness. Yeah, there's nothing better than on a beautiful summer's day, getting a nice cold beer, going out into a beer garden, getting a bag of pork scratchings open. I am a sucker for some pork scratchings. Do they have good beer snacks here, though? Absolutely. In fact, they've got a far more extensive range of beer snacks. Fish. We don't really do beer and fish in England. The whole beer and fish thing's pretty cool, actually. Dried fish. And then, of course, you've got coated peanuts. We've got coated peanuts, but you've got the green ones, the yellow ones, the orange ones. You got this one, these ones, those ones. So yeah, there are a lot more, a wider range of beer snacks here. We typically go for our crisps, our nuts, our pork scratchings. Pork scratchings, though, bloody hell, I miss them. They are just, yeah, they're something to die for. They're incredibly salty, I must say. And that's what makes you drink more, which is a bit dangerous. But yeah, that is one thing that I miss. Some cheeses. Sometimes I do love a good cracker, and Cathedral City. That's a cheese, so a bit of cheese on a nice Jacob's cracker is pretty nice. Maybe some Red Fox cheese, yeah, delicious. We do wonderful cheeses, wonderful blue cheeses. I would go as far as to say probably the best cheeses in the world. Now, I know a lot of people in the comments will be saying, the French one. No, I'm sorry. British cheese is delicious. It's absolutely wonderful stuff. So yeah, I do miss a lot of British cheeses. We've got great cheese here, absolutely. We've got brilliant cheese, but there's certain ones in certain regions of the countrysides of Britain that you pick up at farmers markets and what have you that are just so unique. You can't find them anywhere in the world. You won't find them anywhere in Europe. You won't find them anywhere at all. But yeah, there are just certain things you can just pick up from, say, your local farmers market or what have you, and they're just absolutely to die for, must be said. Are there any books that I would recommend to read? The Lord of the Rings books. Just read all of them. Read all of them. And I'll tell you why. Because it gives you a deep, in-depth perspective on old, traditional British culture. If you've not read the Lord of the Rings books, read the Lord of the Rings books. That is a true look into the mythos of the British world, in my opinion, of the English world, not British, forget British, English world, like the Shire and what have you. And yeah, it's part of our mythos of an old England, and when you read it, actually, you find that it bears a lot of relevance to what's going on today with how the powers that be are trying to reform and reshape our world, So yeah, I'll tell you what, if you've not read them, read the Lord of the Rings books, definitely. So what is my taste in music? That's a very good question, to be honest. I like so many different types of music, man. Like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Now it's just, mine is kind of like what feels true to the soul, what is of real talent, what is of real substance, soulful but not soul music. Yeah, that's probably it's a very, very, very hard question actually to say, oh, I like this specific thing, because if you look at my Yandex Music playlist, like, goodness gracious, it's just such a mixed bag. It's just the most mixed bag imaginable. Though I love music, I listen to music on a daily basis. It's such a mixed bag, mate. It's very hard for me to answer this question at this point in time. One genre that I really got into, and it's mainly for the lyrical genius of these people, was Australian hip-hop, right? From Bliss and Esso to Hilltop Hoods to 360, all of these guys, I mean, goodness gracious, just take a listen to their stuff. It's lyrical masterpiece, especially the older Bliss and Esso albums. Yeah, man, I tell you, just take a look at their lyrics. Same with some of the Hilltop Hood sort of stuff. Mainly for, and also they're very big on kind of the really deep stuff. I like Hilltop Hoods for some of their symbology. They use a lot of symbolic visuals in their videos, and for people interested in that sort of stuff, like, that is kind of the creme de la creme, in my opinion. I mean, yeah, Australian hip-hop is one of those things that's just not a big thing worldwide, right? I've never been to Australia, but as soon as I found out about it, I was hooked, right? Their hip-hop scene, like your Bliss and Esso kind of artist, yeah, I mean, goodness, like, just, you'll get hooked if you like lyrics, if you like really meaningful lyrics that really speak to the human soul. Goodness, that's the stuff, And they have, like, less serious songs, but some of the songs that you find, it's very special. It's real. It's good. I mean, that's a place to go. It's a little known thing. You'd be hard pressed to find any British people that know anything about Australian hip hop, the Aussie hip hop scene. But I do, and I love it. I tell you what, like, it's a hidden gem, that stuff. And I must do a shout out for another chap, Seth Sentry. Okay. Yeah, just YouTube these people. Bliss and Esso, 360, Hilltop Hoods, Seth Sentry. I'm telling you, just take a look. It might be sometimes difficult, but just get the lyrics, right? Because I know obviously English isn't your first language, though you're pretty good at English actually. But point being, right, if you can get a hold of those, go on YouTube, check out the videos and what have you. You'll find some great stuff right there. So, do I think that there is a one-size-fits-all for learning English? No, actually there isn't. Every learner is different and has different demands and requirements, because everyone's different. You've got people that learn better visually through videos and stuff like that, and I even was best friends with a guy when I was back at school who picked up English amazingly just from watching English movies, basically. Yeah, he became so good at learning English just from literally watching English movies with subtitles on. Like, some people are just like that. Some people are just built different. And then, of course, you've got, like, your learners that basically just learn from hearing stuff, so they can listen to podcasts and stuff like that, and they'll get a huge benefit out of that. You've got your kinesthetic learners, so your hands-on kind of people who need to go and live in the environment and go and actually spend time using the language within the society. You've got those kinds of people that won't get any value until they're actually just using it, rather than just doing the theory, the grammar, the books and stuff like that. For most people, though, actually, the best route is probably going and just doing a general English course, like your English file kind of stuff, and I recommend that because it just covers everything. Like, you've got everything from your videos to your audios to, you know, your grammar, to the writing, to the reading. It just covers everything, right? So, you know, you've got to work out what you are as a learner primarily, and you can do that through different tests online, actually, to work out what kind of learner you are. And then once you've worked that out, then you know, okay, there's how I learn best. So maybe you're a visual learner and you'll get far more benefit out of, say, it could be both reading as well as the visual stuff like videos and stuff like that. So you've got to work out what kind of learner you are. You probably already know. I think a lot of us already know from having our experiences at school. You know, some people just reading a book just doesn't cut it. You know, some people just need to be hands-on, which means that they need to, of course, yes, pick the language up through grammar and the books, but they will need to go out into society and use the blooming thing. Or just, even if you're choosing it online, they'll need to use it to get the value and really learn it. So there is no one size fits all. There are different types of learners, basically. So yeah, that's a very good question. The last question from yourself. How much does language shape the way people see the world? And what's a big win for knowing multiple languages? Okay, I can tell you now, right? At least from an Englishman's perspective, I can tell you this. Basically, whenever we go to other countries and we speak languages, and we, you know, people are very impressed. Like, if you go to Spain and you start trying to speak Spanish with the Spaniards, they're very impressed. They really egg you on. They really encourage you. When you go to Russia, it's the same. Когда мне нужно говорить по-русски, когда на улице, я думаю, люди любят это, когда я говорю. Хотя у меня есть много проблем в моей грамматике, но я думаю, люди любят этот факт, когда я пробовал, да. So, of course, to list the benefits, yes, people will be impressed for a start. People will be quite happy that you are learning the language. People will also, yeah, you'll have more opportunities in life. You'll be able to expand your friendship circle. You'll generally have a lot more character and you'll be a more interesting character, I would say, by having other languages under your belt. You'll also be able to gain a deeper sense of another culture in a way that you just wouldn't be able to without the language. So all of these things do add up to just general benefits. I have zero regrets learning Russian, and before that I had zero regrets learning Spanish. I've never regretted learning a language, basically. It only has upside to your life. And it kind of puts you, in a way, into a different category, especially when you're English, specifically when you're English. Because if you're English, you most likely do not have a second language under your belt. Like, most likely, it's just, you know, because everywhere English people usually go, which is, of course, not Russia, like Spain or Greece or what have you, like, they usually end up just going to English-speaking parts. And you can find those everywhere because there are so many English speakers around the world. You can find them everywhere. So, you know, the need to really learn a language doesn't really come up as much. But if you go to somewhere like Russia, you definitely got to learn Russian. You've definitely got to learn Russian. Yeah, like, it's like 100%. I mean, you can get by, with English in the big cities, fine. But I tell you what, you'll have a much smoother experience of just life in general if you just learn the blooming language. So there we go. Now, of course, all the questions have not been answered, right? We've still got questions from hi and bye, I suppose. And we've also got questions from Maximus Sun. So those are going to be in 2 separate videos because these topics require separate videos. So anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed the Q&A for today, and I will see you in the next one. Ta-ta for now.